into our live launch coverage. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast tonight. Our photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane, are also out and about, getting ready to do some photography of the rocket, and Adam to track it as well. If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can follow them on X. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. While you're on X, you can all follow Spaceflight Now by simply looking up Spaceflight Now. If you're not on X, though, we are on Blue Sky as well as Threads and Facebook. We'll also be joined in tracking assistance tonight by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. As we begin our first countdown of the year, I also want to thank our moderators in the live chat, Ciclistia Lee, Astro Joe, and Mark Otto, all checking in. Good to see you all in the new year. Hope you are all doing very well. You can help them out in the live chat if this is your first launch ever with us, or if you're coming back and want a refresher. We respectfully ask that you refrain from using all caps in your responses. We also would request that you post your comments in English. Acknowledge that this is a non-political outlet here, so we ask you to refrain from overt political dialogue. And of course, perhaps the most importantly, is be respectful of one another. Every launch could be someone's first, and just because something is exceedingly obvious to you doesn't mean that someone isn't learning something that you may already know. So extend the same kindness that you would have liked extended to you the first time you saw a launch live in either a live stream setting or in person, and just go ahead and answer to the best of your knowledge, and that way we can all get a little bit smarter about space together. In that spirit, we're powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube that makes these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks like Kitty Chronister, Cumulus Granatus, Skate Letter, The Rocket Girl, Billy Badbutt, Silver for Lunch, Jonathan McD, Lauren L., and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our member-only Discord server, as well as, of course, the ability to watch our live liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission tonight or other comings and goings in the realm of spaceflight, you can go ahead and use that YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we roll on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that is greatly appreciated. Also, since this is the first launch of the year, I'll go ahead and ask early on in our broadcast. If you haven't already, a great way to support the channel is just by clicking that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to our channel here at Spaceflight Now. Enter the new year with a little more than 318,000 of you, broadly speaking, in our subscriber community. See if we can end 2025 with at least 500,000. I think that's a reasonable goal, don't you? Going back to the Super Chats for a second, want to thank the Astronomers, one of our channel members, for a $10 Super Chat. Really appreciate that, the Astronomers. Thanks for being with us on our first live stream of the year. And thanks as well to another channel member, Joni Mahoney, the $5 super chat, who says, "Go Will on Spaceflight now. 2025 is going to be a good year." It's going to be busier, I'll tell you that much. It's getting off with a running start here, as just yesterday, Blue Origin's recovery vessel left Port Canaveral. We've seen our video that we posted up on X, formerly Twitter, of the departure of the barge known as Jacqueline, named for Jeff Bezos' mother, that heading out to support the inaugural flight of the New Glenn rocket. Still keeping our eyes over on Launch Complex 36 for the reemergence of the New Glenn rocket. So far, Blue Origin has not officially named a launch date for that mission. Indications suggest as early as Monday the 6th, though time is quickly dwindling for Blue Origin to roll the rocket back into the pad, get it vertical, and be ready for a launch. Also coming up in the near future, you more than likely have noticed that SpaceX published its list of goals for Flight 7 of its Starship rocket from southern Texas. We'll, of course, be down to cover that as well for you. And then smack in the middle of the month, we have a dual moonbound mission with a combination of Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost lunar lander, as well as Japan-based iSpace and its Hakuto R Mission 2, both heading for the moon, both launching on the same Falcon 9 rocket, set to lift off from here at the Cape in mid-January is their current target window, though once again, sort of wash, rinse, repeat, we're in a no official launch date has been announced situation, so we'll have to wait and see when all of these folks put specific dates on the calendar, but you can bet we'll have good, robust coverage of all those missions and everything else coming down the pike in 2025 for you right here on our YouTube channel and on our website, spacelightnow.com. Coming back to the mission at hand, though, tonight, the launch of the Thuraya 4 NGS mission. As we're talking about the milestones of fueling and going through the countdown, you can hop over to our website at any time at your convenience, spacelightnow.com. Have a full write-up on this mission. You can learn more about the satellite, where it's going, what it's doing, and the company behind it, Space 42. For now, let's talk about the timeline of the countdown, the milestones that we're anticipating in a nominal countdown scenario for this Falcon 9 rocket. As we're currently T-minus 49 minutes, 16 seconds, and counting. Nominally speaking, the readiness poll for the start of fueling will be taken at T-minus 38 minutes. SpaceX conducts this poll electronically, so if they feel like they're in a good position to do so, they can take this poll a little bit early. 38 minutes from T0 is the nominal point when it is conducted. Assuming that go-ahead is given at the T-minus 35 minute mark is when prop load gets underway. Starts with a loading of RP1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage, and the frost line and subsequent vapor that forms as a result of that LOX load on the first stage is a good visual indication that fueling is in fact underway, as in the last few Falcon 9 launches, SpaceX has not come out and given word that fueling has begun, so we've had to rely on these visual indications, which fortunately we've got our good cameras pointed at the rocket, so we'll be sure to let you know when we can make the call on the start of fueling. T-minus 30 minutes is when they begin loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels of the Falcon 9's first stage. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will be true on the second stage about 4 minutes after that. T-minus 23 minutes, second stage RP1 loading wraps up. And at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the strong back chill down process gets underway. This is when SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen loading. We see it manifest visually by the so-called big vent that begins right about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40. That venting will continue on until about 16.5 minutes, where it will taper off, setting up second stage LOXO to begin 30 seconds after that. T-minus 7 minutes is when the engine chill down sequence gets underway for the Falcon 9. It's when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. Helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, we'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes before launch, the first stage LOX tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we get the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before liftoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. That's coming up here, targeting a liftoff at 8:27 p.m. Eastern. That is 01:27 UTC, or in T-minus 45 minutes and 18 seconds. Currently T-minus 44 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. Of course, 2024 was a banner year for SpaceX, wrapping things up with 134 launches for its Falcon family of rockets. 2 of those were Falcon Heavy missions, the rest all Falcon 9s. Of course, SpaceX looking to continue that trend and surpass that with this now new year. Of course, one of the items that hindered this number from being any higher than it already was when SpaceX rounded out 2024 was the mishap that happened on the upper stage back over the summer, which caused SpaceX to stand down from launching for a little bit. So, of course, the company looking to have a year without any mishaps that caused them to ground the Falcon fleet. On board today, though, is this particular satellite, kicking SpaceX off with its first orbital launch of the year. Taking a look at the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite. NGS stands for Next Generation System. The company that launched, or is about to send this satellite up, is called Space 42. It was just a few months ago that it formally formed as a new company. Combination between one of the biggest satellite providers in the UAE that being Alya Satellite Communications Company, known in short as YASAT, and an AI-powered geospatial solutions company, Bayanat. The mission getting underway, though, before the merger happened to take place, YASAT launched 3 of their previous Thuraya satellites starting back in 2001, excuse me. Thuraya satellites 1 and 2 are still on orbit, providing connectivity in the regions of Africa, Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East. However, Thuraya 3, which launched back in 2008, did have a, quote, unexpected payload anomaly that, according to financial filings from YASAT, caused an ongoing servage outage, which was not able to be rectified. So Thuraya 4, an upgraded version of the previous satellites that came before, adding some additional capabilities once it is arrived in GEO. This, of course, is a rendering of what the satellite looks like deployed in its on-orbit configuration. Here's what it looks like right now, essentially, while it's inside the Falcon 9 rocket. This was an image taken by Airbus, the satellite's manufacturer, back before it arrived in the United States. This was when they were in the process of encapsulating it into the transport vehicle before it boarded an Airbus Beluga plane and made its way over here to Florida. Speaking of encapsulation, we do have some photos of the encapsulation that were shared by an official with Space 42, the acting associate vice president, Ahmed Al-Manhali. A couple images here, a couple more images here of the satellite as it was encapsulated into the Falcon 9 payload fairings. One of the nice things about these encapsulation photos is you do get a rare glimpse into the tail numbers on these fairings. Of course, part of SpaceX's business model is reusing both the fairing halves as well as the Falcon 9 first stage boosters. You can see, looking at the bottom of the photo on the right-hand side of these two pictures, fairing half on the right, it's got the number 200. The fairing half on the left, number 181. That said, SpaceX doesn't often say ahead of its broadcasts how many times each of the fairing halves have flown, so we'll have to wait just a little bit to learn what the flight number is for these fairing halves, I should say. There's a zoomed-in look at those halves atop the Falcon 9 rocket there. Of course, the second stage on the Falcon 9, always brand new, but the Falcon 9 first stage, this particular booster has the tail number B1073, and it's going for its 20th flight tonight. Talk a little bit more about its flight history as we continue on through the count. Currently T-minus 38 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 36 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. I want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Chuck Briggs for gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Appreciate that, Chuck. Who, of course, is manning one of the live cameras out here tonight. Go ahead, pop his view up here. Appreciate Chuck and Jen for helping us out tonight and for expanding our channel member community here. Also want to welcome Cobra Emergency joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Also, for those 20 channel members who received membership, if you haven't thanked Chuck in the live chat yet, please be sure to do so. Also want to thank channel member Josh King for a $5 super chat. Appreciate that, Josh. He says, Happy New Year, Will. Any planned Falcon Heavy missions for the year? There are. I don't have the list in front of me right this second. But I believe one of them will be the launch of Astrobotics Griffin lander. Sans the Viper rover, of course. That decision coming down from NASA to not fly Viper on the Griffin lander. So Astrobotic has decided to add some other customers instead. If memory serves, there are at least a couple of other Falcon Heavy missions this year. Just not leaping to the front of my mind right this second. See if we can look that up as we go on through the count tonight. Now T-minus 33 minutes, 34 seconds and counting. Do have word from SpaceX that, quote, all systems are looking good and weather favorable for liftoff. While not quite noting that prop load has gotten underway, we do believe we're starting to see some signs of vapor near the base of the Falcon 9 rocket there. If you look near the bottom of the rocket, just above ground there, the pad deck, you see a couple gradients of gray, pretty dark to sort of charcoal. Just above that charcoal line is where we're starting to see a little bit of signs of vapor there. Coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron did forecast a pretty favorable outlook for this mission at the start of the window. 95% chance of favorable weather at the start of things, with liftoff winds being the only concern tonight. Launch weather officers were tracking between 18 and 26 mile per hour winds, also keeping an eye on the booster recovery weather, which was tracking in the low to moderate range. Currently T-minus 29 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. Want to thank the more than 5,000 of you who are joining with us live this evening for this first orbital launch of the year. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also, we'll note that we are at the point at which SpaceX has begun loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will happen on the second stage in just a few minutes. I want to bring in a video here from Airbus, the satellite's manufacturer, give you an idea of what the satellite looks like in its actual sense, not a rendering. We'll come to that in a minute, but this is a series of clips of the satellite in their clean room before it was encapsulated in its transport case. Also note there's some information in English to read about the satellite. Won't be trying to read all of the wording here for you in real time, but as you can see, there's the Beluga plane that I mentioned earlier in the broadcast on which the satellite was transported from Europe over here into Florida. Of course, it is now encapsulated atop the Falcon 9 rocket there in the live picture on the right-hand side of your screen at pad 40. Time now T-minus 25 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. Just past the top of the hour here, as SpaceX is a little less than 26 minutes away from its first Falcon 9 launch of 2025. Maybe the first launch of the year, far from the first launch for this first stage booster, though. Tail number 1073 in the SpaceX fleet. If you weren't here when I mentioned it before, this will be flight number 20 for this booster. And it still would be 4 shy of being the launch leader for SpaceX's fleet. That distinction still belongs to B-1067. SpaceX is working to increase its reusability for its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights. Same with the payload fairings. Talk more about the fairings in just a little bit, but for now, let's go ahead and take a trip down memory lane with the booster history here before we get the big vent and the start of preparation for second stage LOX load. First flight for B-1073 was a Starlink mission. 53 version 1.5 Starlink satellites launching on the Group 4-15 mission back on May 14th. That was followed up by a launch for one of SpaceX's longest-standing customers, Luxembourg-based communications company SES, sending up SES satellite number 22. A couple more Starlinks after that. 4-26 on August 10th, 4-35 on September 24th of 2022. I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Hakuto R's second mission to the moon. Its first happened to launch aboard this booster as a solo venture back on December 11th. This followed up by the launch Amazonas Nexus on behalf of Hispasat on February 7th. Mission to the International Space Station was up next. The Commercial Resupply Services 27, or CRS-27 mission, lifting off on the Ides of March 2023. Run of Starlinks here for a while for this booster. Starlink 6-2 on April 19th, 5-11 on June 12th, 6-12 on September 4th, 6-27 on November 8th, 6-37 on January 15th, and 6-41 on March 4th. First mid-inclination rideshare mission for SpaceX was up next for this booster, lifting off on April 7th of last year, Bandwagon 1, carrying 11 satellites. Back to Starlink land we go, then Starlink 6-58 on May 13th, 8-9 on July 3rd, 10-7 on August 12th, 6-61 on October 23rd. And then finally for this booster, a mission for the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, sending up their GSAT-20 communications satellite back on November 18th. That, of course, brings us to today. We're in 22 minutes and 22 seconds. We'll see launch number 20 for B-1073. Time now, T-minus 21 minutes, 1 second and counting. Now less than 10 seconds from now, the feed line conditioning will begin. We'll see that manifest with the so-called big vent coming up at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. A little bit hard to see because the wind apparently is blowing the vent directly at the crew access tower there, but you can see now some of the vapor wrapping around crew and cargo access tower there at pad 40. See it better here from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs camera perspective, looking they're south of the rocket essentially, looking up north at it. This venting will continue on until about T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds as the feed lines are being chilled prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. So far, all is progressing on time with this first launch of the year for SpaceX. A good omen to start off 2025. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. 'Cause, like I said, it's not only with Falcon missions, but of course Flight 7 of Starship coming up here in the very near future, potentially as soon as a week from today, though SpaceX has not formally announced that as a official target launch date. There are notices out that are suggesting a launch on the 10th is in the plans right now. Currently down at Starbase, the Super Heavy booster is at the orbital launch mount by the launch and catch tower there, nicknamed Mechazilla, of course. This will be the first time that SpaceX launches a Block 2 Starship rocket, the upper stage. Take a live look now at Starbase from our friends Lab Padre. Some lights coming and going. One of the nice things about Starbase as it currently exists is that it lies along a public beach access road. So you can get some great views just by taking a drive on over from Brownsville. And depending on when you make a trip down there, you too could see a nearly 400-foot tall rocket at a pretty close proximity. Now T-minus 17 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. Less than a minute left on the big vent here. Time now T-minus 16 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. See the big vent has wrapped up. Second stage lock slowed, now just 10 seconds from getting underway. I want to thank a couple folks in the live chat for your support tonight. Our thanks to Monkey Tree Rob, good to see you back this evening, for $2 super chat. And Goku, marking 2 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level. Appreciate that, Goku. Glad to have you on our side, and appreciate you being a member ongoing with us. It says, thanks for all the live feeds. Very welcome. Thanks for your support of what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Monkey Tree Rob back again with a $10 super chat this time. Thank you, Monkey Tree, who says, rockets are life as we know it. Will Robinson, thank you for all you do. Thank you so much, Rob, for the kind words. I will very much extend that out to all the team here at Spaceflight Now, since this is exceedingly far from a solo venture. Taking a look from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs, C&J Images. It's just one of our friends behind the camera. Obviously, our Adam Bernstein is behind the tracking cameras here at the press site. Another photographer, Michael Kane, getting ready to track the rocket from the north side of things. Looking forward to sharing his images with you after liftoff. Also want to thank the Rocket Girl for being a member with us for 5 months at the Mission Specialist level. Really appreciate that. She says, happy to be here again. It's time beginning a brand new year, a brand new spaceflight era. I hope all of you will have a wonderful year full of launches. Go Falcon 9. Go Spaceflight Now. Very kind sentiment. Last little mention from the live chat here. One of our moderators, Astro Joe, has been with us for 30 months. My goodness, Astro Joe, appreciate you sticking with us all this time and all you do as a moderator. Really appreciate that. Now T-minus 13 minutes, 50 seconds and counting as we're awaiting pad level views from SpaceX, which should be coming up here in the next few minutes or so. Let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be launching when it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? As we mentioned near the top of the broadcast, SpaceX is launching the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite to a geosynchronous transfer orbit. We've seen a number of those in the recent weeks, so you'll probably be familiar with the trajectory here, but for those who may have missed those launches, essentially we'll be heading out due east when it leaves the pad. Falcon 9 first stage booster B-1073 is going to follow the arc of that red line there and aim for a touchdown on SpaceX's drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. If successful, this will mark the 92nd booster landing for that particular drone ship and the 391st booster landing for SpaceX to date. As we mentioned, with the payload fairings that are flying on board the Falcon 9 rocket, one is number 181, the other is number 200. SpaceX will once again endeavor to recover those payload fairings, turn them around for future flights. They splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of parachutes. SpaceX said in a presentation back at the beginning of last year now that they save about $6 million per recovery effort, so it's an ongoing and important part of their business model to recover and reuse these as much as possible. They'll be brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels and then brought back into Port Canaveral and to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where they will be refurbished, prepared for their next venture. Time now, T-minus 9 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. So you can see we're getting our first pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket. Space 42 is the customer, hence the logo that is temporarily emblazoned on the middle of the Falcon 9 rocket there. SpaceX commentator notes that things are still tracking well. The vehicle remains healthy. As just a quick bit of note here, you'll see that the countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen is a little bit different than what you're seeing from the SpaceX feed in the big box here. Reason for that is our clocks are in real time, and what you're seeing from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our callouts on mission milestones in real time until we're relying exclusively on onboard camera views. As a point of note, SpaceX commentator notes that one of the fairing halves flying today, flying for a 19th time, the other for a 16th time. Fairing halves are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. In a second, we should see a live picture of the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. Actually, I have a nice view of the crescent moon there just above the crew access tower there from this camera perspective. Really nice framing here. There's a live picture of a shortfall of gravitas there, staged in the Atlantic. Time now T-minus 7 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Coming up on the engine chill down sequence here in just a moment. Time out in T-minus 6 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. I want to show you a brief animation from Space 42 of the satellite that's going to be launching here in the next 6.5 minutes. It's an animation of the deployment sequence here. According to Thuraya's acting associate vice president, with the solar panels fully extended, it has a width of 43 meters, the length of about half of a football field. It has 5 electrical thrusters. There's the mission patch from Space 42. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. Here in the next 30 seconds or so, the strong back retract sequence will begin. Start with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. Time now T-minus 4 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. In just a few seconds here, you'll see the clamp arms open up. Call for the strong back retract. There we go. The clamp arm's now in motion. Less than 4 minutes remaining. Want to thank the now more than 26,000 of you who are joining with us live for this first Falcon launch of the year, first orbital launch around the globe for the year. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you could hit that like button for us, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we continue on with these final minutes of the count. Do want to thank a few folks for your support this evening. Thanks to Corey Parsons for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Corey. Who says, awesome work y'all do. This is my go-to channel. Well, thank you. That's very kind. You see the strong back leaning away from the Falcon 9 rocket in the up-close camera perspective from SpaceX. Felix JV191 with a $2 super chat. Wishing Godspeed to the mission. Thank you, Felix. He okay. Great handle. With a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, He okay. As we are now less than 3 minutes away from liftoff. At this point, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Good call from SpaceX. Stage 1 LOX load. Now less than 30 seconds away from the same being true on the second stage in real time. May take slightly longer for that, for us to hear the call from SpaceX. Just again because of the difference in real time versus what's coming in from the stream. Now less than 2 minutes till liftoff. To hear the call for stage 2 LOX load complete. At this point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The additional venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
Good call from SpaceX. As now we're just about a minute away from the first launch of the year. We're going to go ahead and keep our eyes focused on the rocket. We'll come back to the live chat on the other side of liftoff. "52 seconds and counting."
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch, and we'll be good to go for the first orbital flight of 2025.
LD go for launch.
And with that, we are now less than 30 seconds away from SpaceX's first Falcon 9 of the year. T-minus 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the first orbital flight of 2025. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Now a little more than a minute into flight. Falcon 9 will be throttling down as it approaches max Q at the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Passing through max Q now. Coming up on a few different events in fairly rapid succession here. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff for MECO. Comes up at about T plus 2 minutes and 27 seconds. That will be followed seconds later by stage separation and the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine for SES-1. And the payload fairings will be separated a little bit after the 3-minute mark.
You can track
Impact
our
chill
progress to
started.
orbit.
Good call for engine chill as they're thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Coming up on MECO here. Got MECO. Stage separation. And SES-1. Second stage engine start.
Stage separation confirmed.
Impact ignition.
Good calls from SpaceX. Still getting great tracking views from our team on the ground here. See the hypersonic grid fins extending on the Falcon 9's booster. There go the payload fairings in our big box. Should see the same on the SpaceX cams in just a moment. And our first views of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite there. Call out that both the first and second stages continuing to follow nominal flight paths right now. A good start to the year for SpaceX and its customer, Space 42. Now approaching 5 minutes into flight here. The next milestone coming up will be the first stage entry burn, when 3 of the Merlin engines on the Falcon 9's first stage booster will reignite. Burn lasting about 26 seconds in duration. Given that it's such a clear night, there's a decent chance that we may be able to show you views of that entry burn. That being said, there could be a few pesky clouds that we're just not seeing between us and the booster, given how dark it is, but we will do our level best to bring you views of the entry burn if our tracking cameras here on the ground are able to capture that view for you. Now 5.5 minutes into flight. Now 6 minutes into the mission in real time. The entry burn set to start now in just less than 20 seconds. Again, we will attempt to get our tracking camera on this if we can. Should be clear enough to see it. But this part of tracking can be tricky, so no hard guarantees, but we'll do what we can. Entry burn should be now underway. And we've got that entry burn. Well done, Pete. Call for the start of entry burn from SpaceX and its onboard cameras. Entry burn in real time should be wrapping up here in just a second. There it goes. So you can see the telemetry data from the Falcon 9 first stage booster, bottom left-hand corner of your screen now. Speed continuing to plummet as the entry burn is now concluding from the SpaceX onboard camera perspective. Booster now below 40 kilometers in altitude and making its way down towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Once again, if successful, this will mark the 92nd booster landing for this particular drone ship. This will also be the 311th drone ship landing for a booster, if successful. The dot in the box on the left-hand side of your screen, still a view of the upper stage engine that you're seeing right now on the on-camera views from SpaceX. There's a view from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Tricky to track it when the dot is that far and faint, now 8 minutes into flight. First stage booster now traveling below the speed of sound. Second stage flight termination system has now been safed. No longer needed at this stage in flight.